Good evening. Being 7 p.m. calling the meeting of the public hearing to order. We need a roll call vote. Andy Levine.
Here.
Liz Diorio is excused. Brad Jackson.
Here.
Joe Levino.
Here.
Anthony Nelson.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Before we begin this evening's meeting, I want to take a moment to recognize the passing of our friend and chairwoman, Teresa Magnet. Her passing leaves a profound void, one that cannot be filled, but can be honored through remembrance, gratitude, and the continuation of the values she stood for. As chairwoman, she led with strength, clarity, and unwavering commitment. She guided us through challenges and helped shape the direction and spirit of this committee in ways that will endure far beyond her time. Beyond her title, she was someone who inspired trust, respect, and admiration, and many of us here were touched not only by her leadership, but by her kindness and wisdom. As we move forward, may we carry her legacy with us. May we lead with the same courage and serve with the same dedication to public service as she did. We extend our deepest condolences to her family, and we honor her legacy by continuing the important work she devoted her life to. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we're going to move on to the special town meeting warrant. Article 1. To see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken under Article 40 of the April 29, 2023 annual town meeting, authorizing the select board to acquire by gift, purchase, eminent domain, or otherwise, all or a portion of the property or interest therein, located at 333 Andover Street. The general municipal purposes to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute, additional sum of money for the acquisition of such property and structures thereon, including all costs, incidentals, and related thereto, and further to authorize the select board to take such action and execute such documents and agreements as are necessary to effectuate the purpose of this article or take any other action related thereto. Mr. Townley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As folks who have paid attention to the 333 Andover Street saga over the past several years, which for those watching at home, that is the Sharapa Farms. As folks are aware, the town has had in the past two separate allocations of funds to further the acquisition of this property. Since the initial vote taken in April of 2023, the town undertook environmental investigative action on the property to determine whether or not what kind of subsurface conditions existed on the property. We got that report last year. And then following the allocation, the secondary allocation of funding for the property, the select board engaged me to have meetings with the property owners in an attempt to see if there was some sort of public-private partnership or some way that we could work together between the family and a potential developer to see whether or not we could acquire certain rights in a portion of the property for use as open space or for general municipal purposes, as was stated in the articles, while allowing for potential development of the property, in an effort to allow the family to get paid by a developer, as opposed to getting paid by the town. So I engaged in those discussions through the attorney for the family. We both sides put out feelers to various developers to try to see if there was any interest in a developer entering into that sort of engagement. At the end of that process, we reached a point where two developers indicated that they were interested in moving forward. One developer for a commercial space on the property, one developer for a retail space, for a residential use of a portion of the property. Both of those proposals would have allowed the town to retain a significant portion of the upland area on the property for us to use either for, either passive outdoor recreation or active outdoor recreation or other general municipal purposes. However, after much deliberation and discussion, the select board made the determination that they thought that both of the proposals, both of which would have required a zoning change in front of town meeting, they were concerned that the proposals had too large a use of the property, and represented more than they thought the town was willing to give in exchange for getting back some of the open space. And we're concerned that they weren't going to be able to pass a zoning change, which would have required a 2/3 vote. So at that time, my marching orders were to sit down with the family and see if I could negotiate a friendly taking with the family, which is what it sounds like. We would come to an agreed upon number. They would sign documentation agreeing not to sue the town. At the end of that process, the family and the town came to a number that was a number that we were willing to take to town meeting, and there was a number that they were willing to accept and forego their rights for litigation to sue for damages for a take. That number was $10,750,000. And that number requires an additional appropriation of $6,310,000. So we currently have the remaining $4,440,000 is what is left from the initial two appropriations from town meeting, and so the 6.3 is the delta between what's left in our account and what we would need to effectuate the friendly take. And so the plan from the select board, which I wholeheartedly endorse, was to come to some sort of resolution with the family so that there wouldn't be litigation. We know a number. We know a number now that we can take to the town meeting, and see if the town is willing to expend those funds to obtain that property. I believe the number is reasonable, in part because if we had taken the property, we would, without a friendly taking, we would have been exposed to litigation. Certainly, we were informed that they were already preparing litigation if we actually effectuated a hostile taking. Even though we had the $4.4 million in the bank, which we would have paid as our pro tanto for that, when you go into eminent domain litigation, you are subject to 2 or 3 or 4 years of litigation. Almost certainly, almost all eminent domain litigation ends up in some sort of Solomonic splitting of the baby between what one party's value thinks and what the other party thinks the value is. And any difference between the 4.4 million that we're going to pay them up front and the ultimate jury decision, we would be paying 12% interest on every year. After, sitting down and talking over with staff and kind of crunching internal numbers as to the value of the parcel, we believe that the 10.7 was a reasonable ask for town meeting to acquire what is the last large open space parcel in the town of Wilmington. And if the town does not acquire that last open space parcel, we would, if the town votes to not take this step, then I believe the will of the select board would be to, rescind the taking and allow the family to dispose of it on the open market, which would almost certainly result in some sort of development of the parcel, whether it required a zoning change or not. So the ask in Article 1 is to appropriate additional $6.31 million from free cash to effectuate this purchase. Just so folks are aware, because the administration has known that this taking was outstanding, we had kind of a bookmark on a certain amount of free cash that we knew if this went forward, we were eventually going to have to spend a certain amount of free cash on this. The fact that it's happening now and not in 2 or 3 years just means we have to expend the free cash now instead of 2 or 3 years. But we always knew that there was a very high likelihood that we're going to have to write a significant check from free cash to cover this, even if we took it an unfriendly taking. So that's the rub from Article 1. Anybody have any questions?
We'll put that to the board. Anyone have questions?
Oh, I'll go. Just based on what you just said, talking about that 12% interest, is that based on a total amount of what the property would be?
The delta between what you pay them and what you owe them. So said in a court case, there's statutory interest applied. Yeah. So
okay, I was just trying to wrap my head around, because if it was the total number, that's 1.3 million a year.
Yeah, no, it's
not bad. So it's still significant.
Say we paid them, $4 million, and they got an award of $9 million.
Yeah,
and we had to pay interest on $5 million over right. 4 years at 12%. That's a lot of money. Yes. And then we'd end up paying more than the 10.75 that we're getting it for now. Mm-hmm. We did some rough calculations based on, and so the developers who came in, they did do their due diligence. They went out, they evaluated where the wetlands were on site. They came in with conceptual plans of where they would place their proposed developments. That allowed us the benefit of being able to see how many square feet of the property was upland and could likely be developed. So we got a good idea as to where the developable portions of the property are based on their evaluations. There's a lot of land out there, and there's a potential for significant development if for some reason the town decides, even if you left it as it is, which is R60. So you can still acre and a half zoning, but there's a lot of acres and a half out there. So even if somebody wanted to just put a bunch of houses out there, there would still be they could do a significant amount of development on that parcel. I apologize, I interrupted your question.
No, that's great explanation. Short term, long term. Short term, I'm assuming if we do go forward with this, is there any plan to do anything on that property? Long term, you have this. You've presented us with very long plans before. Is there anything that we have in mind that we were thinking of using this property for?
So as anybody who's been sitting through, as I know Marianne has, through the school building project, has been told, our outdoor athletic space is in a challenging position right now. So the ability to put another full-size baseball field or another full-size soccer or lacrosse field out on that site would be a big help to, you know, the athletics in Wilmington. So kind of short term, those would be kind of, you know, a parking lot and a couple of full-size fields to supplement what we already have would be a relatively easy add out there. There's a potential that I think was listed, you know, we've talked about, you know, a new DPW barn. That would push it slightly further out towards the edges of town, it would be closer to 125, and so it wouldn't significantly impact their ability to get around town via the highway or any of the other major routes. There's also, you know, there's also been and still exists a ring committee in town, and I know one of the things that was specifically mentioned in the taking of that property was the potential for a pad for an ice rink. Those second two are longer tier things, and not certain, but I think certainly the active outdoor recreation field space is something that we've been kind of looking to find locations to supplement the field space that we're going to lose at the north. So that would be an easy place to put in a full-size baseball diamond and a full-size soccer field, cross field.
Okay. You talked about the uplands part and, you know, the developable area. So what is the breakout of it? Like, yeah, like is it like 60% would be non-developable, like 40% is?
Yeah, it's about 40 acres of upland.
Okay.
Of the 60-ish acres that we'd be getting. Of note, Sharapa Farms includes a portion of acreage that is not within the town of Wilmington, that is within Andover. This is not talking about that portion. We cannot take land outside of Wilmington by eminent domain, even with a friendly taking. So there's that land, which is mostly wet, is not part of this, but there's about 40 acres of upland. Some of it's challenging to get to. There's some narrow spaces to get to, but yeah, it's about 40 acres, about 30 of which is, you know, easily accessible from Andover Street.
Thank you. And my kids will appreciate that answer, because as I walked up the door tonight, they said, "Is this going to change what Wilmington looks like?" I said, "No, this is just inside of Wilmington." They were trying to wrap their heads around it. So, where the article says all or a portion of the property, I think you kind of answered that, where that was if you were going to do a public-private. Is that why that's worded that way?
Well, it's worded that way. It's also, I mean, that's standard language because it was in the original article as well. So if, for instance, we went in and found, hey, there's a corner of this that is really contaminated, we could go and say, we're taking all of it except for the contaminated corner. And we're leaving that with you guys, with the owners. So it allows the town the flexibility to, after investigation, decide that they want a smaller portion for whatever reason. It would also have facilitated a public-private partnership.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Absolutely. So just to double click on his question, so 40 acres of the upland that's capable of being developed. Of the developers that came in and took a look at it, how many acres were they proposing to develop?
So the commercial development was a very large warehouse, and I think they were going to leave the town with between 18 and 20 acres of upland, a portion of which is on the backside that's tougher to access. So I think about 8 acres we would have gotten right next to Andover Street, and then about another 10 or 12 on the far side, closest to the Andover line. The residential development was a little bit different. I think their total developable acreage for all of everything they needed, including roads and parking spaces, was only about 10 acres. It was all upland, but the remaining 50 acres of the lot, they were going to turn over to the town. So we've gotten all the wet stuff, plus the remaining upland portion, which would have been about 30 acres. And they did have a portion of their development was on the backside. So it was, we had a lot of space near the Andover Street, a lot of developable land near the Andover Street lot line.
So 40 acres of upland, the residential proposal would have left 30. That seems like a significant portion of the 40.
Yes, but it was a significant residential development, and and so it was a very dense multifamily development. Mid-rise, multifamily development. So apartment buildings as opposed to single-family residences, which is why it would have required a zoning change.
Gotcha. So we have the developer strategy, the friendly taking strategy, and then the hostile taking strategy.
Yes.
Let's just focus on the hostile part. So the 4.4 million is currently parked somewhere. We haven't, how much of that money has been used? That's been appropriated?
So what's been appropriated was about 4.5. We used 131,000 for our environmental evaluation.
Okay.
So what we have remaining is the 4.44.
And understanding that you'd probably be in litigation for 2 to 4 years, it's going to be expensive.
Yes.
Do we price out or project what legal fees would look like in addition to the interest?
Yeah. So the legal fees for something like this would probably, plus legal fees plus expert testimony. Now you're probably talking in the neighborhood of $50,000, maybe $100,000, but in that ballpark, depending on what expert route they went.
Okay. Thank you.
It's important to keep in mind that they would have money to fund the litigation because we'd be writing them a check for $4.4 million the minute we did the taking. So they could use that money to fund their litigation defense. And that would be how they would be paying for their experts.
Okay.
Brad or Anthony, do you have any questions?
Yeah. So if I understand it correctly, 40 acres divided by 10.75 million, we're talking about just under 270,000 an acre of usable land. Is that a fair, quick math assessment?
I believe you. I didn't do the math based on acreage. I'm sorry. I can do that.
I guess my point is it sounds to me like if you're talking 40 acres in the greater Boston area, 270,000 an acre is reasonable. I'm basically throwing out the unusable 20 acres. And by the way, as someone who abuts a wetland on the other side of town, it sounds like you did environmental studies, but is there anything that's been done to look into mosquito control for kids playing in soccer and lacrosse? And it's pretty brutal. And I pay for it myself for my residents, but I'm just curious about that side. And overall, I think those are two parts. So one, sounds like a fair deal. Somebody must have done the math and recommended 270,000 an acre seems reasonable to me. And then the environmental aspect. If the land, even though it's not in the 20 acres of unusable land, will mosquitoes be a problem for people using that land that is considered usable?
So that's a really good question. I would need to have a conversation with our health director about that. And certainly, we already have a mosquito plan in place for town. I trap as a private property, so it's never been a part of that. But if and when the town took it over, I would definitely, defer to Shelley Newhouse's expertise about how we would handle that from a mosquito or any other kind of negative issue that would impact health. I would defer to Shelley.
It makes sense. I always tell people that mosquitoes don't care about property lines, and they fly up to 8 miles, and all my neighbors have to do it, or else if I spray, it doesn't matter. So I wanted to make sure that was being at least considered in this.
As we talk about if and when we acquire this, we'll sit down and kind of like we did with the Textron fields over on Lowell Street. We'll put together a master plan for the property, and I'll make sure that Jamie McGaldy and Shelley Newhouse kind of discuss that issue to make sure that we're doing what we can, just so people are aware. I've talked to some real estate folks in town, and the price of a vacant buildable lot in Wilmington is like $350,000 to $450,000 for one vacant buildable lot. So it doesn't take very long at those prices to add up to $9 or $10 million.
Brad?
I have no questions. Thank you.
I just have one brief one. As far as environmental testing on the site, what has been tested, anything?
Yeah, so we hired an individual to go out, or a consultant to go out and do extensive ground soil and groundwater testing. They made the determination that there is a PFAS plume in one of the wetter areas of the property that does not originate on the property. So it's being caused by an offsite property owner to the south of the property. According to the LSP that we contracted with, we would be filing what's known as the down gradient property owner filing with DEP, which is a filing that we're required to file once the owner of a property has this information, which hasn't happened yet because we didn't give it to the property owners yet. We have the information, but we don't own it. But once the owner of a property has this information, we're required to start filing with DEP. We'll be filing a down gradient owner property status, which basically means we're saying, yes, we understand that there's a reportable condition on here, but we can tell based on our testing that it's caused by somebody off-site. So you need to go after them and tell them to clean it up. And so that's what we would be filing. It would not materially impact any of the proposed uses for the site. And according to our LSP, it's of amounts that residential or commercial developers regularly deal with on sites and handle without significant cost increases to projects.
If we acquire a property, would there be any other testing, environmental testing on the property? Or are you satisfied with what's been done to date?
At this point in time, I think we're satisfied with what's been to date. As folks are aware who've been paying attention, this is also the location of the subsurface mulch fire. That triggered testing by the fire department and also testing by DEP of the air quality and the smoke that was coming off. They didn't find any problematic chemicals in any of the smoke that was tested in that location. So we're fairly certain that 13,000 yards of mulch that we had to deal with as a part of that mulch fire. We're fairly certain that was just what we thought it was, which is mulch and combustible organic material, but didn't have any. There was no kind of reportable contaminants in that. The property has what you consider to be, litter. So there's things that we would be required to go out and clean up, but not contamination.
When you say litter, do you mean tires or cars?
I mean, yeah, like a broken appliance, a mattress, things of that nature. It's a big parcel, and there's some of that on there, but not what you would consider contamination. It's like trash as opposed to contamination that requires a 20 filing.
We don't know at this point whether there's trash buried on the property.
So if there had been a contaminant buried on the property, we believe our LSP would have found that through the ground soil and groundwater testing. That's why we had them, and they did a vast swath of soil and groundwater testing to try and eliminate that possibility. So while there may be, again, trash that we have to deal with if and when we develop the property, we have, there's no indications from any of the testing that our LSP has done, and they don't believe that there's any contamination that would require a supervised cleanup, other than the PFAS, which we've already kind of we have a plan for it, and we're going to deal with if and when we obtain the rights to the parcel.
Yeah, just one more from me. I believe, and I couldn't get the GIS map to pull up because there's no service in here, but abutting this property, there's another large town-owned property, right? That's between 125 in this site.
Yes, there's a large parcel that is Article 97 land.
Mm-hmm.
It's owned by, it's under the control of the Water and Sewer Commission.
Okay.
For water protection. But that is the land that's between this parcel.
Okay. So my question was going to be, is any of that developable for us in the future or anything? But if it's, already deemed that way, and I'm assuming not.
Yeah, Article 97 is what makes it more difficult to develop, not impossible, but more difficult to develop property. More importantly, 125 is considered a limited access highway by MassDOT. And so we've had discussions with them about whether or not, as a part of this process, we could get access through that parcel and onto 125. And there would be some hurdles to that. I think they would prefer access to go down Randover Street to the pre-existing traffic signal rather than try to come out of 125 at another location. It doesn't mean it's impossible. Paul Looney, who's the town engineer, and I and Jamie McGaldy have discussed it as a possibility, but the hurdle is kind of high to get into a limited access highway. So we'd have to show that it's really the only feasible way for us to get to a portion of the lot.
Okay, thank you.
Since this is a public hearing, I am open it up to the public for any comments. Okay. Seeing none, I'll go on to Article 2. See if the town will vote to accept NDLC 59F5 Clause 17E, which authorizes an annual increase in the asset hold estate limit for exemptions granted to senior citizens, surviving spouses, and surviving minors under NDLC 59S5 Clause 17D by the percentage increase in the U.S. Department of Labor Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index the previous year as determined by the Commissioner of Revenue, to be effective for the exemption granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2026, or take any other action related thereto. Mr. Town.
Thank you. So, as folks who have paid attention to the select board meetings over the past month or so, we did have discussions regarding these exemptions. And one of the things that we had extensive discussions about in the administration and with the select board and with kind of the public was given the increased tax burden that we're bringing on with the new school, were there ways that we could help, the seniors who are in the most dire economic situation get a larger break on their taxes. And so the Articles 2, 3, and 4 are all in that vein. Article 2 is for the 17D folks, which is surviving spouses, minors, or persons 70 years or older, who get are entitled to an exemption. This allows us to take their asset limit and increase it by the Bureau of Labor Statistics COLA every year. So instead of the asset limit being flat and basically means the minute you go above that limit because the Social Security gets increased, you're no longer eligible for that amount. If we raise it by the COLA every year, it's in an effort to try and keep the people who are already getting this still allowed to get it and not being knocked off because they're getting an increase in Social Security every year. And so that amount of that exemption, which is just, you'd have a COLA added to it. And so that it allows it for a greater number of seniors to stay eligible for that.
Any questions?
Do we have any idea of what that would mean as far as what would get passed? Like, is there a rough dollar impact?
So this one does not have a significant financial impact. So for instance, in our 17D for FY25, the total number of tax dollars that we abated under 17D was $3,315. That's total across the entire town. And this is a kind of an odd situation because for 17D, the state reimburses us, but they reimburse us at a flat rate. Right now, they reimburse us for more than we spend. So they send us $9,100 every year to cover these exemptions. So the cost is, we're basically could just use that money back from the state to pay for any differences of them.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the board have a question?
Just one clarification. Was it 17D that you were saying?
Yes, 17D.
So warrant articles is 17E.
Yeah, so the 17E is the clause that allows you to amend the 17D.
Right. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so 17D is the clause that gives the exemption. 17E is the one that says you're allowed to add a COLA to the 17D.
Great. Thank you.
And it'll be similar in the next article. I'll give you a preview. The next article will be very similar.
And if anybody wants to, all the people watching, if they want to see where these exemptions are, go to the town website and the assessor's page.
They are. And you can come by the assessor's office. They're all very knowledgeable about these, and we have a whole pamphlet that goes through those exemptions. And I know that the assessor's office would be more than happy to help anybody sign up for these eligible.
Any comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, Article 3. To see if the town will vote to accept MGL C59S5 Clause 41D, which authorizes an annual increase in the income, gross receipts, and assets, whole estates, limits or exemptions granted to senior citizens under Mass General Law C59S5 Clause 41C by the percentage increase in the U.S. Department of Labor Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index for the previous year as determined by the Commissioner of Revenue to be effective for the exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2026, or take any other action related thereto.
So this is the very similar clause to the one referenced in Article 2. It applies to a different set of exemptions that are allowed via statute. Just so folks are aware, just to go back to another question, for these, they're the 41C exemptions. The number of exemptions we granted in 2025 was 12. The total amount was $6,000. You're talking about a relatively small amount of both recipients and dollar figures. So this would increase that by COLA. This again, it adds the COLA to those to allow the amounts of the assets to keep up with the actual cost of living adjustments that seniors might be getting from Social Security if they're just.
Does the state reimburse for this as well?
No, so this one doesn't have the over reimbursement. They reimburse us for the $6,000. adopting this exemption, we would be responsible for anything above the basic amount. So the COLA becomes the responsibility of the town. So anything above and beyond the 6,000, for 12 people, the 6,000 that we spend, we would be responsible for it.
And one point as I'm thinking about this, so a senior citizen could I'll say financially, I don't want to say financially, but if COLA doesn't keep up with the increase in whatever their social security payments are, they can, this could fall short as far as the help that they need, right?
Sure. So there's two ways it affects that. So there's on the one side, there's the assets that there's asset limits. So if you keep those assets limits the same, less and less people will be able to qualify every year because the asset, saying your assets are not increasing via the COLA. On the other side, it's the amount that gets increased by COLA. So it's $500. You add a COLA to that $500. That's, the COLAs have been, between 2 and 4%. It hasn't been, and before the last couple of years when there was high, inflation, the COLAs were 2%. But say it's 4%. So 4% of $500 is $16.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're not going to be breaking the bank on this article.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Anthony?
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick piggyback on Andy's point. I guess it wouldn't prevent this if we pass this, which sounds like it's needed for seniors. There hasn't been a cost of living adjustment to these numbers in maybe ever or quite some time. But this wouldn't prevent us from, if Andy said there may be a gap between with what this covers and the actual increase. This wouldn't prevent us from a second article being discussed, right? This is just a starting point. Is that an assumption?
Article 4 is the one where there's meat and significant, I think, a significant impact with what comes in Article 4. Again, it's a preview.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, Article 4. See if the town will vote to accept Massachusetts General Law 59 as 57 and a half. I'm sorry, 50C and a half, which provides for additional real estate exemptions to taxpayers who granted personal exemptions on their domicile under Mass General Law C59S5, including certain blind persons, veterans, surviving spouses, and seniors, and to provide that the additional exemption shall not exceed 100% of the personal exemption. To be effective, the exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2026, or take any other action related thereto.
So, if folks recall, we had a very similar article that came into the HERES Act. This is an article that basically allows us to double the exemptions for folks. So that $500 exemption becomes $1,000. There's a list of exemptions that are impacted by this at the assessor's office. This clause allows the town on our own dime. We do not get reimbursed from the state, but allows the town to double the exemptions and double the amount that the folks get back, including doubling the COLA. So if there was a 4% COLA next year, and we also passed 59.5C and a half on that $500 exemption, they would get not $516, they would get $1,032. And then the following year, you take that COLA again on the underlying 516, and then you figure out what that number is, and then you double it. So if the COLA was another 4%, you'd add $17. And it's instead of getting $533, they'd get $1,066. So for seniors who are currently getting a $500 exemption, this would effectively, if you lived in an average single family house, this clause alone would cover the cost of the school, which was about $420 for the average single family, if you were a $500 exemption person. To get a little bit into the weeds, this also impacts the same exemptions that are impacted by the HERO Act doubling, but you can't double both. They don't get a double. Only one of them applies to them. So they'll only either be doubled under 5C1/2 or doubled under 21J. One or the other will only apply. So veterans won't get two bites of the apple. They'll only get a single doubling. But this applies to all of them. So it applies to all the veterans ones that the HERO Act applied to, plus the several different elderly ones that I think are what we're really targeting with 5C1/2 is to try to, in addition to what the HERO Act does, avail the elderly folks of the ability to get that double exemption. The total cost of 5C1/2, if it was done in FY25, would be in the rough approximation of about $150,000. And that's across the board, including veterans. So that's the amount that the town would be responsible for above and beyond what we get reimbursed from the state. There is sufficient funding in our overlay account. So for folks who don't know what the overlay is, every year we set a tax rate based on every person with real estate paying the full amount of taxes. We understand that there are folks out there who get exemptions and there are people who apply for abatements because they think their taxes are too high. So every year we set aside a certain amount of money. Typically for the last several years, it's been $900,000 that we set aside into our overlay account to allow the assessor's office to cover any exemptions that aren't reimbursed by the state or any abatements that are granted, or any tax cases that say we're charging somebody too much taxes. So that overlay account, the assessor has done such a wonderful job in making sure that we don't get abatements and don't lose tax cases. We have sufficient funds in that overlay account to cover this without increasing the overlay at this time.
Might be a silly question I have to ask you. So what's the duration of this? Is this, I guess my question is the impetus to do this the fact that we're investing quite a bit in the town infrastructure? We have a lot of big outlays. We talked about taxes going up. You just mentioned it. And we're trying to do something for seniors and whatnot. Is this something that's going to continue in perpetuity, or is this something that has a certain duration and then would stop?
So if adopted by town meeting, this exemption is in place until town meeting takes such other action to remove it. One of the things that I know Mary Ann heard this, I know I heard it being on the school building committee. The concerns of seniors were about being priced out of town. And in reaction to those concerns, I know the select board has heard it. I know that other people in the administration have heard it. And out of concerns for folks who saw significant increases in their taxes, primarily based on increases in the values of property, but those tax increases are real nonetheless. This is a method to try and capture the neediest folks and allow them to reduce that tax burden. And I would see this as permanent. I think those tax rates are, our tax bill's never going to go down. So absent some other, mechanism that the state or federal government comes in to do something to support seniors that are in that tax reality, I think this is the one thing that the town we researched, and we believe that it's important for us to help our seniors try to stay in their houses. And this is one way we thought made sense to try and do it.
Other towns do this?
Yes. Lots of towns adopted 5C5. When it was first put forward, Wilmington didn't. And lots of towns adopted the HERO Act when it came out in 2024. We didn't adopt it in 2024. We didn't adopt it all in 2024. But yes, lots of towns had this on the books. As you can see taking the veteran piece out of the 5C5, the total cost for seniors that are currently on it, and I hope more people get on it, by the way. I hope this spurs people to go and say, hey, there's money on the table, maybe I could have qualified. But if it's just the same as we have now, the senior piece of this is, $25,000 or $30,000 a year. So it's not for our tax levy, for our overlay account, the impact from the seniors on this is negligible.
Thank you. So it looks like, just quick and dirty read of the statute, the 100%, which is the doubling, is really the ceiling, and then there's a floor built into the statute. And the wording of the article says shall not exceed 100% of the personal exemption. The statute does go on to say that it's really up to the legislative body of the town to determine the exact percentage.
Yeah. So the motion is going to be for 100%.
That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, I apologize. I should have clarified.
Got it. Thank you.
But the town meeting could alter that if they so choose.
Mhm.
It's in their prerogative. But all my assumptions and the math that I've done is based on us grading 100%.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, you can roll call. Selectman
Yes.
Brad Jackson. We can say yes, right? You say yes, Brad, we can.
Yes. Yes.
Anthony Nelson.
Yes.
Joe Lee.
Yes.
Amy Levy.
Yes.
Myself, that's it. So we're gonna go right into our deliberations of recommendations on the warrant article. So we'll start with warrant article 1. Any comments from anyone on this article?
I think I got the answers I needed. Yeah.
All right, so I'll read the article again into the record. Article 1, see the town will vote to amend the vote taken under Article 40 of the April 29, 2023 annual town meeting, authorizing the select board to acquire by gift, purchase, and domain, or otherwise, all or a portion of the property or interest therein located at 333 Andover Street for general municipal purpose, raise and appropriate transfer from available funds or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute an additional sum of money for the acquisition of such property and structures thereon, including all costs incidental and related thereto, and further to authorize the select board to take such actions and execute such documents and agreements as are necessary to officiate the purpose of this article and take any other action related thereto. I make a motion to accept Article 1.
Second. Oh. You made it. Yeah, oh, sorry.
Any discussion? Go ahead.
One of the last big properties that the town can get their hands on. It seems like it's a reasonable, so. Seems like it's a reasonable, rate for the, yes, some concerns about, defense. That doesn't, it bothers me a little bit. It doesn't sound like it's gonna be too concerning. And we have a lot of uses in mind for that property. We're not gonna get another bite if this happens. If we don't take, in my opinion, if we don't take this action, we're gonna regret it. There's just too much opportunity right now.
Yeah, brief comment for me. I am in favor of this, but, you know, I'll just kind of look at all the options here. And of course, the lawyer's talking about being in favor of the litigation, but litigation is murky, it takes a long time, and it could get messy, right? It might be more cost effective in this case. I'll just do the math here. That is a distinct possibility. So $10 million is a lot of money. It could come in at a lower dollar amount through litigation, but it might not. That's part of the issue with that particular route. When thinking about the developer pathway, understandably, the commercial developer really leaving 18 to 20 acres of the land that you could use doesn't really serve what I think the intent and purpose is here. The residential developer leaving 30 of the 40 acres to me, just thinking through a gut check, kind of, it made me pause and think about it at the very least as an option that could have been viable. It sounds to me that taking it to town meeting to rezone may be a barrier that I can't predict the future, but maybe we just can't overcome and could have a significant risk with that pathway. So I'm really kind of left with one of the options, that being the most viable option, and that's the friendly taking in this case.
Brad or Anthony, any comment? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Brad.
I just, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I know a lot of us have been dealing kind of with this property for a long time. But I do think it's important that, we're now talking about, essentially a $10 million price tag here. And I think that town meeting needs a compelling reason why this money should be appropriated. And some of it was kind of in the town manager's presentation. Oh, the residential was going to be, multi-level apartments, high density. That kind of came out in the conversation. But I think we have to give a compelling reason why we need to spend $10 million. That's a fire substation. That's a lot of money. And I think those of us who have been kind of around this issue for a while have already kind of bought into the fact that this is the piece of property we want to acquire to essentially keep it out of the hands of developers and to increase our amount of available land that we have for recreational use. But I do think we just need to be a little clearer with a compelling reason why 10 million is an amount that we should be appropriating here. So I intend to support the motion to recommend this article, but I did want to make that comment.
Thank you. Anthony? All right, so we'll do a roll call vote. Joe Levine,
Yes.
Brad Jackson,
Yes.
Andy Levine,
Yes.
Anthony Nelson,
Yes.
Scott Neville,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Article 2, to see if the town will vote to accept Mass General Law C 59S5 Clause 17E, which authorizes an annual increase in the asset whole estate limit for exemptions granted to senior citizens, surviving spouses, surviving minors under Mass General Law C 59S5 Clause 17B by the percentage increase in the U.S. Department of Labor and Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index for the previous year as determined by the Commissioner of Revenue to be effective for the exemption granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2026, or take any other action related thereto. I'll take a motion to accept.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Seeing no discussion, you roll call vote. Andy Levine,
Yes.
Brad Jackson,
Yes.
Joe Levino,
Yes.
Anthony Nelson,
Vote yes.
Scott Neville.
Yes.
Thank you. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to accept Mass General Law C 59S5 Clause 41B, which authorizes an annual increase in the income, gross receipts, and assets, whole estates, limits for exemptions granted to senior citizens under Mass General Law 59S5 Clause 41C by the percentage increase in the U.S. Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Consumer Price Index, for the previous year is determined by the Commissioner of Revenue, be effective for the exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2026, or take any other action related thereto. Make the motion to recommend approval.
Second.
Discussion.
I did have a clarifying question on this, because what I heard is that there's, so looking at last year's number, there were 12 exemptions, $6,000, and the state reimbursed us $6,000. Is the $6,000 a flat number that's reimbursed, or is it based on some calculation on the number of exemptions that are filed?
Yeah, so I apologize. Yeah, so it's based on the number that's filed. So if we had paid 14 exemptions at $7,000, the state would have reimbursed $7,000.
Great, thank you.
Anthony?
Just a quick comment. If from a discussion purpose, they gave us the school. Let's give them a little something back. That's it.
Okay, seeing no more comments, discussion, do a roll call vote. Andy Levine,
Yes.
Brad Jackson,
Yes.
Joe Levina,
Yes.
Anthony Nelson,
Yes.
Scott Neville,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to accept Massachusetts General Law C 59 S5C and a half, which provides for an additional real estate exemption of taxpayers who grant personal exemptions on their domicile under Mass General Law C 59 S5, included certain blind persons, veterans, surviving spouses, and seniors, and provide that the Additional exemptions shall not exceed 100% of personal exemptions. To be effective, the exemptions granted for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2026, or take any other action related thereto. Make a motion that we recommend the Article 4. Discussion.
Just one thing from me, so the dollar amount we got, 150,000. But that's including the veterans, and we also have the Heroes Act on our town warrant this year, which, that number gets subtracted. If you're supporting the Heroes Act, then this number becomes 25,000 essentially. So it's a much lower ask than you initially when you look at it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like basically what you're saying is you can't come with it.
Yeah,
Right, so they were supporting one. They take one and they take the other, right, so.
Let's see, no further discussion. Call for the roll call vote. Andy Levy,
Yes.
Brad Jackson,
Yes,
Joe Levino,
Yes.
Scott Nelson.
which one? Doing anything else? Or start?
Yeah, Scott Nelson, sorry.
Yes.
Anthony Nelson.
Yes.
And myself is a yes. Recommended plea.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving to my agenda. Take other business.
With the chair's approval, I wanted to update the committee on some things for shocking tech. So it was shortly after March 7th meeting, I had Burlington, a couple of members from Burlington Ways and Means Committee, which is their finance committee, reached out to me, looking for me to share some information with them, and then to share some information with myself, or them to share some information with me. Just about, where we were getting numbers from Shopton Tech, where I was coming with my stuff. They wanted to let me know what they were seeing and some of the things. They're looking for, in the future, possibly a more collaborative process amongst the towns. So they might propose something like that, maybe not with the entire committee, but some members of the committee. They have not voted on a recommendation on the budget yet. They had a presentation, they requested more information, and then they delayed their vote because they want to have a second meeting, which is next Wednesday is when they're having that. So it's very, had their meeting with Shawshank Tech after we had ours. They had a lot of similar questions that we had. They have not voted yet on the budget recommendation. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. The RICA had their meeting. They had a lot of similar questions that we had, and they voted not to recommend Shawshank Tech's operating budget. So it's kind of up in the air right now. Town meeting has the final vote on all those, but I've watched all the meetings and been in contact with Burlington about some information. So I just wanted to make sure the community was aware of all that that's all going on.
What's the other? Thank you, Scott. Who's the other?
Bedford voted. They had their town meeting before Shawshank budget presentation.
Yeah, that's why you didn't mention.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Any other new business? Moving on to minutes for approval. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes of February 7th.
Second.
Any discussion? Changes, everybody's good? Okay. Roll call vote. Scott Neville,
Yes.
Anthony Nelson,
I was not there on Feb 7th.
okay, so do you want to stay?
Yes, please.
Okay, Joe Rubino,
Yes.
Brad Jackson,
Yes,
Andy Levine,
Yes.
and myself is yes. Minutes for February 28th, 2026.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion?
Just, I said to Tommy before the meeting, these were 3.5 hour long meetings. He did an unbelievable job in those minutes, so I just want to thank him.
Yes, Tommy, thank you very much.
Good job, Tommy.
All right, so roll call vote. Andy Levine,
Yes.
Brad Jackson,
yes,
Joe Levino,
Yes.
Anthony Nelson.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, so we're on to important dates. Just a reminder for everybody, May 2nd is the annual town meeting. It will be at the high school at 9 a.m. Taking motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Roll call vote, Andy Levine,
Yes.
Brad Jackson,
yes.
Joe Levino,
Yes.
Anthony Nelson,
Yes.
Scott Neville,
Yes.
myself is a yes. Thank you, everybody.